Hello and welcome to Penguin Book Club. This is a place to come and delve into all those classics you always wanted to read. And today we'll be chatting about The Way We Live Now by Anthony Trollope. I'd like to firstly welcome Susanna Fullerton as our resident queen of the classics at Penguin Book Club. Susanna has been president of the Jane Austen Society of Australia for the past 18 years. She's also the patron of the Kipling Society of Australia and a founding member of the New South Wales Dickens Society and of the Australian Bronte Association. Susanna is Sydney's best-known lecturer on classic novels, and she lectures regularly at the Art Gallery of New South Wales. Welcome, Susanna.
Hi.
I'd also like to welcome Sarah Burns, the president of the Australian Bronte Association, and Jo Henwood, who's the co-founder of the Australian Fairy Tale Society. And of course, we'd also like to welcome back all our book club members watching our hangout on air. And don't forget to pop your questions into the comments, and we'll do our best to get to them during the hangout. And now to the book. Augustus Melmotte establishes himself in London, and he buys a large house and soon gains a reputation as a great financier. With him are his wife and a daughter, Marie, whom he launches on the marriage market at a grandiose ball, which he hopes will tie her with someone from the landed gentry. Melmotte is running a scam with the fictitious railroad, the South Central Pacific and Mexican, and to set up a dummy directorate of Englishmen of high social standing. Melmotte's large gifts to charitable organisations and lavish entertainments convinces the public of his financial genius, and money flows through his hands. He's asked by the government as a great London merchant to give a dinner for the Emperor of China, and shortly before dinner, vague rumours begin to float that his finances are not in order, and that one of the papers in the sale of the estate has been forged. Public opinion veers sharply. The great dinner is sparsely attended, but at the election the next day, he wins the Westminster seat. Marie, the reputed heiress of millions, falls in love with the most worthless of titled men, Sir Felix Carberry, and they plan to elope with him and steal her father's money to finance the trip. But Sir Felix gambles away the money and fails to keep the appointment. She later marries Hamilton Fisker, the originator of the railroad scheme, and goes with him to America. Melmotte, to bolster up his vanishing credit, forges yet another paper that would give him possession of his daughter's trust fund. But when he fails, he's deserted by the men who had fawned on him, and after disgracing himself by appearing on the floor of the house while intoxicated, he commits suicide. There are a plethora of other characters that I haven't even touched upon, and I think this is one of the things we're going to talk about, the genius of Trollope's creation of his world and all the amazing people in it. Susanna, I'm going to throw to you so we can investigate a little bit more about The Way We Live Now.
Well, Trollope published this novel in the mid-1870s. He'd actually just been on a trip to Australia. He'd spent some time in this part of the world, and he returned to England, and I think looked at his society with new eyes, which is what going away from your home country can often achieve. You come back and you see your familiar world with new eyes. And he was actually horrified by what he saw. He felt that the late Victorian society was full of greed, of vanity, selfishness, egotism. He was appalled, and so he wrote his most satirical and probably his harshest novel. When it was published, first of all in serial form in many installments, and then it came out as a book, it left people rather puzzled. I think he was not used to writing so harshly and so satirically, and his readers had come to expect something more gentle from him, so they were rather puzzled by this book. But it is now regarded as one of Trollope's greatest novels. It has, of course, been filmed by the BBC in a very excellent adaptation, and it's a very rich novel, one that I think you need to go back to and reread. Now, it's also Trollope's longest novel. It is a seriously big book. It takes a lot of reading. So how did you all respond to Trollope's rather wordy style, because he is a wordy novelist, and the sheer bulk of this book, with its all its subplots, its dozens and dozens of characters, and the massiveness of this novel? Does it come across as rather a daunting task to read The Way We Live Now? How did you respond, Sarah?
I did have trouble getting into it because there's so much information and you can't skim.
You need to actually concentrate. And even trying to read it with music in the background I found distracting. I needed to concentrate on what was there. There is so much information, but it's fascinating. And all the plots and, well, I think there's a 6 degree of separation. They're all connected in some way, and they keep crossing over throughout the novel, and it's very interesting reading.
And Joe, you weren't quite so enamoured of this book.
No, not so much, but I don't think it was either the size or the style, because it does, as a good satire, it is words flow trippingly from the tongue. You know, that he is introducing them, he is painting them with bright and sparkling colours as he goes. So that there is that, but there is a lot of it. There's no denying that, and it does go on a long time. And I do feel that, you know, an editor by his right shoulder might not have gone amiss.
What about you, Letitia? A daunting task?
I must admit, when I picked it up, I thought, whoa, okay, it's a big one. And when I first started reading it, I thought it was going to be a completely different story. And I think in that sense, I thought, oh, this is going to be a little bit cumbersome if this is the story that's going to go on for this whole book. And yet, when the new plot started and all the new characters started coming in, it actually was a page turner. I wanted to find out what was going to happen, and he weaves and builds that story really nicely. So I think, although the length seemed like a lot in this day and age when novels are expected to be, you know, half that size, I think it was worth it.
Trollope was one who loved subplots. He has masses and masses of subplots in his novels. And I guess if you were the first reader of the book and you were reading it in serial installments, it might have been quite tricky if, you know, you had to wait a few weeks for the next saga, the next part of the story to come out. It might have been quite tricky to keep track of all of the different characters in the subplots. I think with Trollope, he's a writer that you absolutely have to slow down for. You simply cannot approach Trollope in a hurry. And for many modern readers in our busy lives when we've got so much on, that can often be very difficult. But listen to Timothy West on audio, read this book unabridged, and you don't want one single word of this book cut out. You're so rapt by what a wonderful novel it is and how well Trollope tells his story. And I love his wordiness. I think that's a part of Trollope's charm. If you slow down and you just get into that gentle rhythm of his prose, and he tells you something and then he tells it all over again in a slightly different way, and then later on he tells you again. He's a wonderful friend, I think, as an author. You're in his company and he's giving you this story the way he wants to tell it, and if you can just accept that and slow to his pace, you have the most wonderful time with Trollope. So now, one of the things in this book is it's not got terribly likable characters in it.
No.
You know, there's no obvious hero to this book. I mean, Melmotte is an anti-hero in many ways. There's no obvious heroine. There's lots of different love affairs going on, or love affairs that go wrong, or non-love affairs, different relationships. Are there any likable characters in this book? Is there anyone that you talk to?
I like Paul Montague.
Like Paul Montague, yeah. The man with the past. But Joe, you didn't. Why didn't you like Paul Montague?
No, he's a nothing. I mean, goodness gracious, there are these two strong women, and for some unknown reason, they're flinging themselves on him, and their life is not worth living. And he's nothing. He's fickle. He's charming. He's sweet. He has no money. He has no career. He has no stamina. He has no fidelity.
That's not fair.
Defend him, Sarah. Defend him.
He's the one that he's trapped. He gets caught up in things that are beyond his control, and he's the one who's like, don't go and
step up.
Oh, stop it.
What about Mrs. Hurtle? I mean, if you like Paul Montague, does that mean that Winifred Hurtle is the villainess of the piece? Or, Joe, is she in your mind the strong heroine of the piece.
Well, that was really interesting, I think, with Charlotte, because I did start off, she's the one who's standing in the way of true love, you know, and that's the way he structured it. And I'm seeing her as this malicious woman who's going to trap him into a breach of promise suit. And I'm believing it all the time with her overwrought protestations and reproaches to him and all that sort of thing. She's going to get him back. You would turn from me and, you know, I've come here. And I think, oh, for crying out loud, you're not going to fall for that, Paul. But, of course, Paul does.
It's horrible.
And then he leaves the room and it stops and you're waiting for the mask to fall down and she bursts into tears. It's all absolutely sincere. She has loved him with all her heart. She's looking for a safe haven and she had thought she had found it with him. And again, he's nothing. He's left her. He's abandoned her. And she's real. And I didn't know it until that time. Philip, why did you let me not know that about her? I wanted to know it. And now I do and I care. But it's too late.
Trollope was brave, I think, to create that relationship. I mean, clearly they have had a sexual relationship in their past, and to depict that in a Victorian novel was a brave thing to do. So I think Mrs. Hurtle is a very interesting character. But are there any characters that we like? Sarah likes Paul Montague. What about you, Letitia? Who do you like?
Hetta, I think, was my was kind of my favorite. I think because she was the most inoffensive out of all the characters in some ways. It was her almost, you know, unreal persona that made her likable. I don't know, I liked her constancy, I liked her fidelity to her family, and although, you know, you can see that as a lot of weaknesses, that she was a product of her time, and, you know, and I think, but in some ways she still held true to herself when it came to who she was going to marry, and even though she had this really pushy mother who was sort of, you know, pushing her to marry these other men that she didn't love, she really sort of held back. And in some way there was this strength to her that I admired, but I couldn't say that there was any character that I was bowled over by.
Yes, I don't think there's any character we really fall in love with. I think it's just really a matter of which ones are we most interested in this novel. I was fascinated by Lady Carberry. She's partly based on Trollope's own mother, Frances Trollope, who was herself a very, very prolific and very successful novelist. And I can strongly recommend trying some of Fanny Trollope's novels, such as The Vicar of Wrexhill or The Widow Barnaby. She's a very entertaining novelist, and we should perhaps discuss one of hers on these Google Hangouts. But Trollope knew about women novelists who needed to promote their own novels, puff them up with the right people, send review copies off to people that you know will write a nice review. And Lady Carberry, of course, is lucky to have the faithful and rather staunch Mr. Brown there in the background. So I find her an interesting character. I don't think she's a very good mother, but then I don't think that Fanny Trollope was a very good mother to Anthony either. So I think she's reflecting some of that from his own experience with his mother.
And I think she was the one who was trying to bring some money into the family as well. Felix had printed it all away and there was nothing left, really.
Just so mean to poor Hetta. She was just horrible to Hetta. But then, and she was irritating me so much that she was, you know, taking from Hetta all the time to give to rotten Felix. And it was only towards the end, when her spirit is still broken by these constant betrayals by Felix, and she's still holding faithful to him. She's still, like so many of Trollope's women, giving all her love and all her worth to the most worthless of people. And really working with the relationship with Mr. Brown, and that really quite lovely proposal at the end, that second proposal, which was really quite touching when he just stretches out his hand to her.
Yes.
Can't help but put hers in his. It was just lovely.
But surely that's also a reflection of the Victorian era, that, you know, the son is the important one. I mean, look at the Bronte family. You know, the son gets the money to go to art school, the son gets the opportunities, he wasted them in that case. The son, of course, is Felix Carberry. You know, he's the titled son, and, you know, he's the big hope of the family. Hessa is just the girl. She's
You say this is in the Victorian era and it doesn't happen anymore.
It does reflect the Victorian era very, very well.
But it doesn't happen anymore. Is that what you're saying, Susanna?
Fortunately, it doesn't
say
happen. Certainly reflecting that age. And what about Hetter's very faithful and, in my view, very dull lover, Roger Carberry?
Awful.
Offer Hetty an estate and respectability, but she doesn't want him.
I think that's just convenient. I mean, he doesn't, with her, a bit like Mr. Collins in Pride and Prejudice.
Oh,
She's there, and he doesn't need to look elsewhere. And it's when I'll stop it.
love.
And he's very persistent, isn't he?
He really is. He's extremely persistent and very faithful. I think he genuinely loves Hetty. But he misses out on her, of course. And I think his jealousy and his suspicion and his resentment and frustration are very, very well portrayed by Trollope.
He's very jealous of
Paul. Character in the novel. Now, we haven't yet discussed the financial side, and this, of course, is very much a novel about greed. The great economist, John Kenneth Galbraith, commented once that he could never, ever go on holiday without a Trollope novel to take with him, because he felt that almost nobody was as good on the subject of money as Trollope. And I think it's one of his great strengths as a novelist, depicting how people manage without money, how people want more money, how greed leads them to do the wrong things so that they get money. Trollope is absolutely superb on the subject of money. And that, of course, comes through so strongly in this book. But don't you think it's a very modern portrait? I mean, don't you think what Melmotte is doing and his personality are alive and well in our world today?
Yes, they are.
I felt like 2008 had happened again in his book, you know, that all that, you know, that skullduggery, if I want to pull out an old word, you know, basically pretending to have money, building upon lie, and building these pyramids of other people's money that then just fall away into nothing. It was just, and I think that's why I loved that plot so much. It was so here, it was so now, and it was so real.
Well, Trollope was reflecting his own times, because of course there was the big Panama scandal. A French Jew was involved in that, and it was a big scandal, and that was just one of many. So it's nothing new.
No, absolutely.
It continues, and people still get taken in.
And Melmotte himself as a character? Did he come alive for you as a character, or was he more a symbol of what Trollope wants him to stand for?
I think he's very well written.
I agree. I thought he was so well written, and to me, he's just the centerpiece of this book almost. He just, it's actually from him that all the threads kind of you know, are let out.
The flame and all the moths are buzzing around.
Yes.
He is a unique character, isn't he?
But I love descriptions of him. In one place, he's referred to as a Medea, and if you think of the revenge and how she had, and then a necromancer, you know, a sorcerer.
Yes.
I mean, that was within a couple of paragraphs. He called all three names.
Well, it's almost
Trollope shows so wonderfully how, you know, the characters see in Melmotte what they want to see.
Yes.
Convince themselves that he's rich, he's important, he's a, you know, he's sort of the tycoon of the age, he's got power. And of course, as we, you know, we find out, he's actually got very few of these things, but you know, he's got the confidence throughout much of the book to get away with it and convince other people.
And in fact, he highlights everybody else's weaknesses, doesn't he, and prejudices.
But he's introduced to us as the swindler of France, that French swindler.
Yes.
And his reputation goes before him, but they still want to be at his ball, have him on their board and involved in Parliament, everything.
Yeah.
Another thing I think we need to discuss is the aspect of religion in this novel. Melmotte, you know, might or might not be Jewish. There is, of course, the Jewish character Mr. Breggett, to whom Georgiana Longstaff gets engaged. and then of course she ends up breaking that off. And there's that wonderful picture of Georgiana as sort of having sunk in the marriage market and getting more and more desperate to take anybody. And she feels that she's doing him a favour. He's a lovely character. And the anti-Semitism in Victorian society is brought out very strongly in this.
And the anti-Catholicism as well.
Yeah.
That dinner with the bishop and Brahman, that's terrible. You know? Protestants are Protestants and Catholics are Catholics.
Yes. Yes.
And that character of the priest, the only Catholic character there, doesn't serve any point other than to be unlikable and irritating, and to live out stereotypes about trying to proselytise everybody, and he's just to be made mock of. And it's just horrible. It's but all of that sort of thing, and I keep on wondering, is Trollope making fun of these sort of religious prejudices, or is he upholding them as being people who have standards? And anybody who doesn't have these standards, that's the destruction of our society as we know it.
Oh, I think he's as satiric about religion, men of the cloth and religion, as he is about everybody else.
Yeah.
And that comes through in his wonderful Barchester series, the six novels of that series, where he shows that clergymen are just as weak and full of faults and failings as anybody else. And I actually think that Trollope's own religious belief was very slight indeed. And I think he could stand back and he could look at these men and judge them as men, and look at their positions in the church as jobs that they took on, and I think he was as ruthless with them as he was with everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
was he anti-Semitic?
Sorry?
Susanna, was he anti-Semitic?
No, he himself was not at all.
Right.
Although most people in the Victorian era were.
Yes, of course.
So, he was certainly surrounded by it. And, of course, he would have belonged to clubs where Jewish members were not allowed. And, he lived in a world that was anti-Semitic. So I think, again, he was brave in taking on that character of Mr. Breggett and showing him as somebody who was actually appallingly treated by others in the novel.
Yes.
So, yeah. Another character that we haven't discussed is Ruby Ruggles. Is she something from a sort of soap opera? The beautiful country maiden seduced by the wicked aristocrat. How did you respond to Ruby Ruggles and her plot?
Caricature.
Caricature?
Yeah. I mean, I never entered into her heart. She was an utter dope in every respect.
No, she saw an opportunity, I think, to try and get out of her situation. She thought Sir Felix Carberry over Mr. John Crumb was a better option.
I do love the name, John Crumb.
I definitely think she exemplified, the choices that women had at the time, to really get out of your situation and to be able to move ahead. Marriage was the only way, and damn straight, if you had a better offer, you were going to, veer towards that as Sir Felix compared to Mr. Crumb,
But, all these female characters who are chasing the men in this really ugly fashion. It's just, quite demeaning to watch.
What choice did they have, Jo? It wasn't like they could just go off and get a job and build their own millions. I
am ambivalent about the results, but you look at Ruby at one level, and then Georgiana, and then Marie Milmont, and they're all doing exactly the same thing. They're going to latch on, and they're not going to let go.
But don't you think the men are doing their share of chasing as well? I mean, if Felix is after Ruby for an affair, there's no doubt about that, and Paul Montague is definitely very keen on Hetta, and I think there's a lot of men who are chasing Marie for her fortune. So I think Trollope with Ruby Ruggles highlights the vulnerability of them. She's so easily going to be seduced by Felix, got pregnant, turfed out into the vast world of Victorian prostitution to lead a short and horrible life. She's a pretty girl, and she's vain, and she's a bit silly, and her fate could so easily. I mean, she's lucky she ends up with Mr. Crumb at the end of the novel because she could be on the streets of London, soliciting her clients. So Trollope, I think, has such an understanding of how vulnerable women are. And also, I think of what a little bit of money, what a difference a bit of money makes to them. One of his wonderful books, which is not much read, but it's absolutely fabulous, is a novel called Miss Mackenzie, about a middle-aged woman who spent her life looking after elderly male relatives. And so suddenly they've all died, and she's come into money. She's inherited from them. And suddenly all these men turn up as her suitors because, you know, she's got money. And she's got to work out which of these suitors like her for herself and which like her for her fortune. And it's a fabulous book. I really, really Miss Mackenzie. Absolutely wonderful. Trollope, of course, was the author of 49 books. He was hugely prolific. Not every single one of those 49 books is brilliant, but I've read well over 40 of them, and I can recommend probably at least 35 of those books. He's one of my favourite Victorian novelists. I absolutely love him. And,
how long was he writing for, Susanna?
Sorry?
How long was he writing for? When did he...
all of his long career. He started as a young man, and he continued until, you know, he dropped dead. With one,
He was at the post office as well.
he also worked at the post office, so he had a very successful career. And next year is Anthony Trollope's 200th birthday, so we have to celebrate it by discussing his books next
We should
year.
go to have a picnic at Trollope Bay.
Trollope's Reach is the one place in Australia named after Anthony Trollope, so there'll be celebrations for Trollope next year. But Leo Tolstoy commented once that Trollope slayed him with his greatness. And coming from a novelist like Tolstoy, that's a really, really high compliment. And he said, Anthony Trollope just slays me with his greatness. So I think he's a brilliant novelist, and I hope that watching this hangout and perhaps reading The Way We Live Now has encouraged others out there to go away and read some Anthony Trollope, because he's marvelous.
Well, Susanna, if people didn't believe us, they have to believe Tolstoy. That's all I can say.
Tolstoy.
I'd like to thank everyone for joining us for Penguin Book Club today. Thank you, Susanna, Sarah and Joe. And our next book club will be on the 18th of December. Heading towards the end of the year and heading towards Christmas, we'll be reading the wonderful Louisa May Alcott novel, Little Women. We look forward to seeing you then, and thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.